Hey guys, it's Amy here, and today I bring you my February wrap-up. Somehow I managed to read 12 books in February, so I'm just going to get on with it, otherwise this video is going to be horrendously long. Also, I'm going to change things up slightly. Instead of going in chronological order, I'm going to go from star rating, so from my lowest star rating to my highest star rating. There was one book this month that I didn't finish, and that was Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton. I wasn't enjoying it, I got about halfway through and decided to put it down. So moving on to the first book I did finish, and that was Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me and Other Concerns by Mindy Kaling. I was really disappointed by this book. I thought it was going to be a really enjoyable, funny read, and I just didn't find that at all. I don't even think I even laughed whilst reading it. I originally picked this one up because I really like Mindy in The Mindy Project, which is a TV show, and I thought that this was going to be really similar, and it just wasn't. It has a lot to do with her life and upbringing and how she got into the industry and everything, and The Office, and I've never seen The American Office, so I think maybe if you've seen that you would enjoy this book a lot more than I did. I just didn't know who she was talking about, I didn't know who she was referencing, I just didn't find it very interesting, and there were whole sections where I was just flicking through because I was like, I don't know who you're talking about, and this is really quite dull. I also just generally didn't enjoy the tone of the book. I wasn't enjoying like listening to her and what she was having to say, so I gave this one a 2 out of 5 stars. Moving on to my 3-star books, firstly we have Royal Assassin, which is the second book in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. You'll notice that the first book is later on in this video because I gave it more stars. I won't go into all of what this one is about because obviously if you haven't read the first one it's going to spoil you. I'll just say that I was slightly underwhelmed by the book. I thought it was going to be really exciting. I really enjoyed the first one, and this one I just found dragged a little bit. It had a really great beginning and a really great end, and I think the whole bit in between could have just been condensed down. Like, the book could have been so much shorter, and I just feel like I kind of wasted my time. Saying that though, I am currently reading the final book in the trilogy, and I'm enjoying it a lot more than the second one at the moment. Next we have Our Endless Numbered Days by Claire Fuller. This is the story of a young girl who is taken by her survivalist enthusiast father to live in a European forest, and she gets told by him that the whole rest of the world and everyone she loves is dead, and that they're now having to live in this cabin in the woods and survive by themselves. This book was good and really enjoyable read. I got through it quite quickly, and I found the whole premise of it to be quite interesting, the kind of psychological undertones and the reasons why her father was doing this, and kind of how you see it all progress, and the ending was really great. There were parts of the book that slightly dragged for me, that's why I didn't give it anything higher than a 3. It was just a really enjoyable read. Next we have The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This one I picked up because I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle in December, and it was one of my favourite books of 2015, so I wanted to pick up another Shirley Jackson and see how much I enjoyed it. This one disappointed me. I didn't enjoy it as much as We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I gave it 3 stars. This one follows the story of 4 separate people who are invited by Dr. Montague to Hill House to see if they can sense any kind of mystical and otherworldly things going on there, because the people who live around Hill House believe it to be haunted. That sounds like a really great premise for a story, and I was really excited to read it, but I feel like I just didn't connect to any of the characters in the book, and I didn't really feel anything for them. I also thought it was going to be a lot more kind of scary, like I thought it was going to be a bit more haunting than it was, and I just didn't find that. Even still, I did read the whole thing and I did enjoy it. I think it was just these characters that I didn't connect with in any way, whereas We Have Always Lived in the Castle was so good. I really enjoyed it, so I'm hoping if I pick up some more Shirley Jackson I'll maybe enjoy some other things that she's written. My final 3-star book was Anatomy of a Soldier by Harry Parker. This was sent to me by the publisher. This one follows the story of a young British soldier who is in a war zone and ends up getting injured, and you learn right at the beginning of the book that he has had his legs amputated. All the way through the story you are flicking from present day to just before the time that he is hit by the bomb. When you eventually get to the end of this book you actually see how he was properly injured to begin with and how he loses his legs. Now, in summary, that sounds like a book I would really get a lot of empathy from. I would really feel for the characters, but I didn't get that at all. And I'll tell you why. Because this book is told through the perspective of objects that this soldier is carrying or is near the soldier at the time of something happening. So it's told through the perspective of his boots, for instance, or his day pack, all these different things. And because of that, I felt this real divide between myself and the characters. Like, I didn't feel really anything towards them. I didn't feel any connection because I wasn't hearing like this inner dialogue of the kind of torment and the horrific things that were going on. It was just very separate. It was like being like looking at it from a very outside place. There's also a other perspective, which is that of the terrorists who are making the bomb that eventually blows this guy's legs off. And I expected when reading it to have some sort of angst towards these people and to be angry with them, but I didn't get that either. I wasn't feeling anything towards them, and there were a lot of civilians mixed in, and I just didn't feel anything towards anyone, which was odd because I'm such an empathetic person. In books I get so attached to things that I was quite sad by the end of it that I didn't get any of those kind of connections. So yes, that's why I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. I wish I had just connected a little bit more with what was going on in the story. Moving on to my 4-star books, and firstly we have Assassin's Apprentice by Rob and Hobb. This one I really enjoyed. I thought it was a really great fantasy read. It basically follows the story of a young man named Fitz who at the beginning of the book discovers he is a bastard-born son of one of the royalty in the area known as the Six Duchies. As the title suggests, Fitz becomes an assassin's apprentice and he weaves in and out of the lives of the people in the town that he lives in and the castle and all the royal folk, and it's just a really enjoyable read. The pace of the story was great and there were so many exciting things happening all the way along. I just really enjoyed the telling of the story and it was a really fun experience for me. So that is why I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next we have And Then There Are None by Agatha Christie. I actually listened to this one on audiobook. It's the story of 10 people who are invited to this island by this mysterious character that they don't really know. Upon arriving at the island they all discover that each one of them has a slightly dark past which could connect them to murders of different people. Again, as the title suggests, slowly these people get murdered and start disappearing and things, and you don't really know who the murderer might be. I just love Agatha Christie. I find it to be so enjoyable to read and go back to. I definitely get that like nostalgic, happy feeling when I read Agatha Christie. If you haven't read anything from her yet, I definitely would suggest that you do, especially Poirot. I love Poirot so much. Next we have A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This is an extended essay taken from a lecture that Virginia Woolf did in 1928. So in this book, Virginia Woolf uses a fictional narrator to discuss the topic of women and creativity and fiction writing and things like that. She basically concludes that if women through history were given the chance, if they were actually given a room of their own to go and create and make things and just do things like men do, then we would also be up there in the top fields of everything where men are now, you know, science, music, art, everything, history, all these things. Women would be up there too in the history books because they had been given the chance instead of kind of shoved to the side, you know, look after the children, do what you're meant to be doing, you know, actually given the chance to create. I found the way that it's written to be really, really great. The way that she uses this fictional narrator to discuss through the topics that she wants to speak about, and she uses examples such as if Shakespeare had a sister who had kind of equal amount of talent to him, then, you know, what would have happened to her, and kind of discusses through that. And I would highly recommend, even if you don't have an interest in feminism specifically, I think this one is just a really poignant read that I think a lot of people should pick up. And my final 4-star read for this month was Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. This was actually sent to me by Penguin. So this one is set during World War II and is told through the perspective of 4 young people from different nationalities. There's a German boy, a Polish girl, a Lithuanian girl, and another German guy, I think. These 4 people end up converging and making their way towards a boat known as the Wilhelm Gustloff. Before reading this book, I had no idea about this ship known as the Wilhelm Gustloff. I was never taught about it in history, I'd never heard about it on any TV show, and I watch a lot of kind of history things on TV. I did, especially when I was younger. So basically, this ship, the Wilhelm Gustloff, is the biggest maritime disaster to ever be recorded in our history. The Wilhelm Gustloff was meant to fit 1,500 people on it, and they crammed on 10,500 people, and then when the Russian torpedoes brought it down, nearly 9,500 people were killed that night, and that terrifies me. That upsets me that I never even knew that that had even happened. So as you can imagine, this book is very harrowing. These 4 young people are making their way towards this ship and they do board it, and you learn everything that happens. Obviously that element of the story is fictional, but the actual event of this Wilhelm Gustloff ship being sunk by the torpedoes is very true, and you can just imagine how horrific that would have been if you were on the ship. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, for about the last 100 pages of this book I was absolutely sobbing my heart out. I wonder why I didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars, as I'm speaking very highly of it. That's because of the romance element that was added in. 2 of the young people in the book end up having a bit of a romance, and I just didn't think it was necessary. I think it distracted from the real importance of what was being discussed in the book. So overall I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I would highly recommend you pick it up. Most definitely, I think it's an important read. Moving swiftly on to my 5-star books for the month. The first one is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix by J.K. Rowling. Obviously I love this one. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not going to talk about it because I'm sure I've spoken about it many times before. there we go. My next 5-star read was actually a graphic novel, and it was Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. It clearly follows the story of a shape-shifting young lady called Nimona, and she ends up ganging up with this guy here who is the villain of the area that they live in. Basically wants to help him kind of fulfill his schemes and plots in overthrowing the good guy here, and it all kind of gets a bit turned on its head because it turns out that other things are going on. I'm not going to spoil it for you. The kind of colour tones that they use throughout the book are just really wonderful. I would highly recommend you pick this one up if you maybe haven't read many graphic novels yet and you want to just start. This is definitely up there on my top for all graphic novels I've ever read. Finally, my last 5-star book for the month is by Like We Knew Our Names, Stories by Anne Valente. So this is a collection of short stories. I picked this one up on the recommendation of Mercedes at Mercy's Bookish Musings, and it is wonderful. I read this book and then I wanted to read it again. It's hard to explain what a book is about when it's a collection of short stories, but let me just say that each of these stories really connected with me on some level. I think sometimes that you can read a collection of short stories and just not connect with any of the stories but find the overall kind of reading of it to be enjoyable. This one, I just connected with everything, like the whole book, like it was so beautifully written. There were sentences that I was reading and I was just like, wow, this is so, how can someone write something so beautiful? Like, you know when you get that feeling? So there is a slight magical realism element to this book. Each of the stories has a somewhat magical thing kind of twisted in there, and it was just wonderful discovering these things and seeing kind of how it all came out. It's just wonderful. I can't even describe it more than that. I really would recommend you pick it up. I've put it in my favourites for the year, so I'll see come the end of the year it could be in my top books for 2016. Wow, so there we go. Those are all the books that I read in February. I would really love to know what you've been reading. Let me know down below in a comment. As always, I will leave links to Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, everything I've mentioned today down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day and I will see you soon. Bye! I've heard so many good things about this one. People talk about it on BookTube all the time, so I think it's probably as good as they are saying it